it's just something to put in. So I'm very pleased to support this bill.
My Lords, I think the Noble Lord Berkeley sets out a case for the future when it comes to pedicabs, and I will come to some of the points that he's made a little later on. But I'm going to focus in my remarks more on why there is the case for this legislation now. But before I get to that, may I welcome my noble friend, the Minister, to his new position, and I wish him every success as the Minister in this House for Transport. And I also very much want to welcome this bill. It is something that I have long championed, and some noble lords may remember I tabled amendments during the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act to try and introduce some form of regulation in that bill. And I apologise in advance to any noble lords who may feel when they hear what I've got to say today that they've heard me make these arguments before. I must also congratulate my honourable friend, Nikki Aitken, the member for the cities of London and Westminster, for her relentless campaigning for legislation to enable regulation by Transport for London of pedicabs. Indeed, I commend Nikki Aitken's determined effort to make sure that the government honoured its commitment to legislate in government time when her own private member's bill was unfairly, in my mind, thwarted 2 years ago. I can't stress enough how hard she tried to get her private member's bill over the line, and she very nearly succeeded where many before her had unfortunately too often failed. And today, I think, is a very good day for her constituents in Westminster and the City of London. Now, my noble friend, the Minister, has already explained why primary legislation is needed to enable TfL to act, and he put the case for this legislation quite clearly. But I'm going to be probably more blunt than my noble friend. He has said, of course, that pedicabs or rickshaws are the only form of public transport in our capital city not currently regulated. But to be clear, my lords, these vehicles, as things stand, need no insurance. There are no police or criminal record checks on the drivers. They can hang around in gangs wherever they want, blocking pavements, sometimes threatening in their behaviour. Some pedicab drivers have been involved in criminal activity, and the lack of registration of them or the vehicle owners makes them quite useful to organised criminal gangs. They drive recklessly, the wrong way up one-way streets. I've also seen them on pavement, and their involvement in hit-and-runs incidents is not uncommon. And of course, without the need for vehicle safety checks, some are unfit to be on the roads. There's more, my lords. Pedicabs can charge passengers whatever they want, and there's plenty of evidence of them ripping off tourists. Then there's the sheer nuisance and disruption many cause to local businesses and residents from the excessively loud music they play. And when I say loud, I mean loud. And yet, my lord, these unchecked, unlicensed and unregulated vehicles are allowed to ply for trade on our streets in direct competition with our heavily regulated black cabs. And that's what gets me, my lords. And I should also make clear, I have no interest to register whatsoever. I'm not even a resident of Westminster. But what I believe is that black cabs, which are synonymous with London around the world and an important part of our reputation internationally for quality and high standards, are forever facing more regulations and new road restrictions, while vehicles and drivers, which too often are a disgrace to our reputation, have been allowed to operate without having to comply with any law, regulation or rule. So finally, my lords, we are going to do something about it. Now, and this is where I come in and sort of come to the noble Lord Berkeley's remarks, and indeed some of those by my noble friend the Minister. There are some reputable pedicab firms who want to and do provide a quality service, and my noble friend paid tribute to them, and they will prosper in a regulated market. I should also add that new forms of public transport and the arrival of technology means that our black cabs too must keep pace with modern public expectations and expect to compete for custom. No one has a guarantee to exist or can afford to be complacent, but what there should be is a level playing field. And as the Noble Lord Berkeley says, I think in this modern world there will be an appetite for different forms of public transport that are not, that some people may prefer because of environmental questions. Now, I hope that my noble friend the Minister and I have been able to demonstrate through what he has said in introducing this bill and what I've said why the word scourge was a worthy description of the current situation, and that the bill's inclusion in the King's speech is justified, because this bill represents something, in my mind, far bigger than just putting pedicabs on a regulatory footing. It's righting a wrong. This bill is standing up for the law-abiding who all too often are unfairly affected by our regulations we always seem to find the time to introduce, by ending the impunity enjoyed by those who flout our laws because we haven't legislated to stop them and make sure the authorities can't stand by. So before I conclude, I have two questions for my noble friend. The first is, what is the expected timeline for TfL being able to introduce the much-needed pedicab regulations? And second, could he explain why the provisions that the regulations may make, as outlined in Clause 2, do not include the amplification of music? That is currently not specified on page 2 of the bill. But overall, my lords, I welcome this bill. We've waited for it for too long, but I'm very pleased that the government has brought it forward, and I thank them for doing so.
My lords, it's a delight to follow my